And there's a real kind of dividing line among people that are commenting. One school of thought is that landlords are taking the mick now and they are exploiting people and basically profiteering. The other school of thought is that actually basic supply and demand, fair profiteering, fair capitalism. Where are you on it?
Well, I can't rule out the possibility that some landlords are taking advantage. But, you know, what we're seeing playing out more generally, and I think is the root cause of this problem, is a spike in inflation. And with that spike in inflation has obviously come a massive increase in interest rates. And landlords who were used to paying close to nothing for their property are now having to finance very expensive mortgages. The 13 years...
Only if there was on a deal that's just expired and needed redoing, or if there was on a tracker or something.
Well, all mortgages, any mortgage taken before 2022 will go up in price considerably. So if you've cut your cloth according to what interest rates were in 2021 or any of the prior 13 years before 2021, you will now be facing difficulty. Everyone's mortgage has gone up. So I think that is the fundamental...
Well, not everyone. If you fixed yourself in for, I don't know, a 5-year deal or a 10-year deal or whatever, then your mortgage hasn't increased just because the base rates have.
No, OK, that's quite rare, though. Most fixes, to the extent people do fix, are 2 or 3 years. So everyone's rate is going to go up imminently or has gone up. And so that is good. I think that's the principal biggest component of the rise in rents. The other big component, of course, is the drive towards net zero and the requirement for landlords to make their properties compliant with an EPC, with an energy performance certificate of at least C by the time we get to 2027, or they'll be prohibited from leasing it. And then the third big driver of rents has been a move in taxation against landlords. So if you're a private renter of property, you own another property, you have to pay 3% extra stamp duty. If you own it in a corporate structure, you pay a greater stamp duty.
Well, a landlord used to be able to offset the interest costs.
And you used to be able to offset your interest costs and your operating costs against the income before you pay tax.
Wear and tear and stuff like that.
And now you can't do that. So there's been a move against landlords. And by the way, successive governments have raided landlords in order to finance their positions. And so we're seeing, you know, the result of all of those things coming together.
So in your mind, it's all basic, fair, above board.
Well, I'm not saying it's all above board, but I'm saying the general trend is driven by factors outside the control of would-be profiteering, rapacious landlords.
Well, obviously, I'm not going to agree with any of that at all. I can agree that this is a problem that's been happening for many, many years. I mean, 40 years since we had right to buy, since 1979. What's happened is we just don't have enough affordable, good quality housing for everybody, no matter what income you've got. I grew up, I lived on a council estate. Everybody on my council estate worked. We were all working people. And we had decent, good quality housing. What has happened from right to buy, successive governments, Labour, Tory, they've all been the same. None of them has invested in housing. And also we've had this shift from housing meaning everything but home. So what housing is now, it's people's pensions. Housing is, you know, because we've accepted low wages, they'll think, well, you know, my house prices is going up. So we always think that housing is perhaps savings or pensions.
More of an asset.
Yeah, an asset, something to give your kids, when actually a house should be a home.
Do you think it's a responsibility of the state, of the government, to provide working people with a home?
I don't think that there's a responsibility to provide, but I think that housing is a human right, because otherwise, if you have no home, you have nothing. If you have no home, then investing in education or healthcare, none of that will matter because you haven't got a home. So housing, it's like a basic need. It's like water.
Do you agree with that? Housing is a human right?
I don't know if it's a human right, but it is an absolute basic need. You need a roof over your head and you need food on your plate.
So then whose responsibility is it to provide that?
Well, ultimately, what we need is a successful economy, an economy which is meritocratically based, and I think one of the subjects we're going to talk about is meritocracy.
Yep.
And I'm delighted we're talking about it, because we need a meritocratically based economic system which allows the entire economy to grow so we can create the wealth required to create the housing for the population. I completely agree with you, Lisa, by the way, that we've had 40 years of neglect in the housing market. We just simply haven't built enough housing. But the most recent spike in costs isn't as a result of a long-term failure. That failure has been underlying and, getting worse. But the spike in costs has happened really in the last 12 months. And that, I think, is more to do with, inflation, interest rates, the drive.
I do think landlords are profiteering as well. I do think there's some profiteering. We're in a housing crisis. We're in a major housing crisis. Rishi Sunak has said nothing about this week. And there is some profiteering happening.
Yeah, there's one other issue which I must mention, is that we've had rampant immigration. And, last year we had a net 600,000 people come into the country. That's at least another 150,000 homes
and
required.
You've got a lot of... we're going to talk about immigration, particularly about the solution to it, whether or not it's more European cooperation. But anyway, you've got companies like, I think, Serco and companies like that that are now proactively going into towns, cities, whatever, putting on events, as I understand it, and actually almost marketing to landlords. Look, you can come to us, we can give you long-term contracts, we can give you fantastic rents, yada, 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 in order to put so-called asylum seekers into these properties. And a lot of people are getting quite tempted by that because the money on offer is attractive to them. The challenge is with that, obviously, it then takes out that housing stock from local people that have been living there, wanting to get on the housing ladder. Debbie says, did you know that some landlords are now asking for pet rent? No, I did not know that. She says, I shouldn't laugh, it's not funny, but I just think it's a bit ludicrous. She's telling me she looked at a property for £1,000, but no pets was allowed. But then he said he would let pets in if they paid £100 per cat per month.
OK, well, he's profiteering. He is profiteering.
What's the... I need to know the end of that story, Debbie. Did you take him up on that offer? Did you pay... I don't know how many cats you've got. Did you take him up on that and you pay your £100 extra for the cats? Very odd. I didn't think actually he was even allowed to do that. But anyway...
I think when it comes to landlording, we're in a bit of the Wild West area, to be honest. There are some very good private landlords out there, but there are also some cowboys as well.